If this story made your skin crawl, don't forget to like this video. Subscribe for more true stories that don't let you sleep at night. And share this with someone who loves horror. Because the scariest stories are always better when you're not alone.
My name is Ember. I'm 16, and looking back on what happened last December, I still struggle with a heavy sense of guilt. Being the older sister to my 15-year-old sister, Kate, usually feels like a partnership, but that night, I felt like I had failed her. It started on December 5th. It was a typical, freezing Illinois morning, and Kate and I were headed to the movies to see Terrifier 3. We weren't 18, but we've always looked a bit older than we are, so getting in was easy. Halfway through the film, just as the tension was ramping up on screen, my phone vibrated so violently it rattled the theater seat. I felt that immediate, burning embarrassment of 100 annoyed eyes boring into my back. In our rush to scurry out of the theater, I actually tripped, adding a nice layer of humiliation to the whole ordeal. Once we were in the lobby, I checked the screen. It was my dad. I didn't call him back because a text popped up immediately after. "Hey, would you mind bringing me some lunch? The little cafe in the woods is closed today." My dad works for a deforestation group about 30 minutes away, in a massive, secluded wooded area I've always loved. It's beautiful there, all rolling hills and a quiet lake. Kate and I didn't think twice about it. We grabbed some food from home and drove out to the site. When we arrived, the winter sun was already starting to dip, casting a deep, radiant orange glow over the trees. I tried calling my dad to let him know we were there, but he didn't pick up. I felt a small flicker of confusion. Why call us at the movies and then ignore the return call? But then I saw the 3 little dots on my screen. He was typing. "Walk down the small hill and wait for me by the lake," the text read. We followed the path down to the water. In the distance, I saw a figure in a black hoodie sitting on the wooden deck, back turned to us. "Dad?" I thought. But as we got closer, the air felt different. Kate started to slow down, her intuition kicking in before mine. I reached out and pulled back the hood. The man who turned around wasn't my father. He was a stranger with a wide, manic grin that didn't reach his eyes. Before I could even process the horror, he began waving my dad's phone in the air like a trophy, clearly relishing our shock. "Why do you have that?" I managed to choke out. He didn't say a word. He just lunged, his hand clamping onto Kate's arm. She screamed. A sound I will never forget. Adrenaline is a hell of a thing. I grabbed her and yanked with everything I had, and we bolted. I've never run faster in my life. I could hear the heavy thud of his boots right behind us. Gaining ground. We made it to the car just in time. I slammed the locks and saw his face pressed against my window for a split second before he ducked down out of sight. I threw the car into reverse and didn't stop speeding until we hit our driveway. My parents were already home. My dad was frantic. He explained that his phone had been stolen at work earlier that day. He'd come home to try and track it. We called the police, and they eventually found the phone discarded on that same lake deck, but the man was gone. They told us there wasn't much else they could do. We thought we were safe. We were wrong. 6 hours later, around 1 a.m., I was in my room with Kate. The house was dark, lit only by the blue glow of my TV. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. "I like that your house is lit only by your bedroom TV." The blood drained from my face. I paused the TV, and in the sudden, deafening silence, I heard a rhythmic rustling just outside my second-story window. I crept to the blinds and peeked through. He was there, standing on something, grinning up at me. And he was pointing a gun. I screamed, "Get down!" just as the glass exploded. Shards showered the room. My parents came flying in, and we all scrambled into the hallway, locking the bedroom door behind us. Then came another soul-crushing sound, a loud bang from downstairs. More glass breaking. He was trying to get in. We huddled together in the dark, crying and praying, while Kate whispered to a 911 operator. When the police arrived and cleared the house, the man was gone again. But they found something on my car that explained the nightmare. Tucked into the wheel well was a small AirTag. That was how he knew where we lived. That was why he had crouched down behind my car in the woods. He wasn't hiding. He was tagging us. It's been months now. He was never caught. The police patrol our street, and we've upgraded our security, but the normal life we had is gone. I still feel like a fool for trusting those texts, for not realizing that silence on the other end of a phone call is sometimes a warning. I don't go to secluded places anymore. I don't even like the dark. I'm just waiting for the day I can look at a sunset and not see a man in black sitting by a lake.
If you're still watching, you're one of us. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more real stories that blur the line between fear and reality. And share this video. You never know who might need the warning.
I've lived with a hearing disability for years, which means my world is often defined by what I can see rather than what I can hear. You learn to read the environment through vibration and visual cues, but there is an inherent vulnerability to it, a constant, nagging wonder about the things slipping past your notice. About a year ago, in a quiet suburb of southern Quebec, that vulnerability nearly cost me everything. It was a frigid February afternoon when I took my dog, Monty, out to the forest bordering my neighborhood. Monty is a Rottweiler Husky mix, and in the deep snow, he's a blur of power and excitement. I let him off the leash, watching him weave through the trees. The woods were a stark, silent white, the only markings being a few old boot prints from earlier in the day. After 30 minutes of walking, I took a trail I rarely frequented. It led to a clearing where I stopped to use my new binoculars. I was so focused on the distant tree line, spotting a strange blue tarp and a makeshift shelter, that I didn't realize how much the world around me had changed. The sun was dipping, and the shadows were stretching. When I turned to head back, Monty's body language stopped me cold. He wasn't playing anymore. He was stiff, his nose pressed to the snow, his eyes darting. I looked down and felt a jolt of ice in my veins. There, overlapping my own fresh tracks, was a set of massive boot prints. My world is naturally quiet, but the sight of those prints made the silence feel heavy, almost suffocating. Because I hadn't heard anyone approach, the realization that someone had been mere feet away from me while I was distracted felt like a physical blow. As we hurried back, Monty suddenly spun around, his chest heaving with a bark I could feel as a vibration in the air. I turned, and my heart stopped. A man, roughly 6 feet 4 inches in a white camo jacket, stood only a meter away. He was a pillar of charcoal and white against the dimming woods. He was staring right at me, his mouth moving. I strained to read his lips, but the gray twilight made it impossible. I didn't know if he was speaking English, French, or something else entirely. I felt the terrifying frustration of the communication gap. I couldn't understand his intent, and I couldn't hear if there were others behind him. Feeling the dangerous weight of my forgotten phone, I gestured that I couldn't hear and retreated as fast as I could. I made it home by 4:30 p.m., locked up, and tried to shake the image of him out of my head. But at 3 a.m., the silence of my bedroom was broken by a physical sensation, Monty licking my hand, urgent and persistent. I checked my phone and saw a text from my neighbor. "Everything okay? Monty is barking like crazy." The fact that Monty's barking was loud enough to wake the neighbors, but hadn't been enough to pierce my sleep, sent a wave of panic through me. I ran downstairs and found him at the glass patio door, his whole body vibrating with a violent snarl. I peered through the glass, my vision still blurry from sleep, until the motion light flooded the yard with a harsh, white glare. The man from the woods was standing right there. I didn't think. I texted 911 with trembling fingers, the fastest way for me to communicate in an emergency. I grabbed a machete from under my bed and barricaded myself in the room with Monty. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, eyes locked on the door. This was the hardest part of the night, the silence. Without the ability to hear a floorboard creak or a doorknob rattle, I was left entirely dependent on Monty. I watched him like a hawk. Suddenly, he lunged toward the door, his throat vibrating with a silent fury. Then I saw it, a shadow cutting across the light under the door. He was in the house. He was standing right outside my bedroom. I gripped the machete, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I could hear the thumping in my own ears. I waited for the door to burst open, for the visual world to explode into violence. But it didn't. When the police arrived, they found the patio door shattered. He had been inside, but he fled through the back gate into the forest the moment the sirens became visible. Nothing was taken. There was no motive other than the fact that he had followed me home. I don't walk in the forest anymore. I stick to the roads where the lights are bright and the world feels a little less quiet. I still wonder what he was saying to me in the woods that day, but mostly, I'm just glad I wasn't there to hear the answer. 2021 was a blur of Zoom calls and home office burnout, but there's one night from that year I'll never be able to shake. I was working from home during the peak of COVID, stuck in a 3-hour meeting that didn't let out until long after my family had already gathered upstate for the holidays. By the time I closed my laptop, I was already 90 minutes late and facing a 2-hour white-knuckle drive through a blizzard. I filled 2 mugs with coffee, braced myself, and stepped out into a nightmare. The wind was screaming, the roads hadn't seen a plow in hours, and my old Hyundai was the last car on earth you'd want to be driving in 2 feet of snow. It didn't even have anti-lock brakes. I'm usually a fast driver, so once I hit the highway, I pushed it to 70 miles per hour. Stupid, I know, but I just wanted the day to be over. I finally rolled into my parents' place around 9 p.m. After a few drinks and the chaos of gift sharing, I completely lost track of the time. It was past midnight when I finally climbed back into the Hyundai to head home. Another foot of snow had fallen. I had a bit of a buzz going, nothing crazy, just enough to make me overconfident, and I figured I was fine to drive. I just wanted my own bed. The back roads were dead silent. I made the mistake of hitting 40 miles per hour on a stretch of unlit road, and as I hit a bend, the car just gave up. I felt that sickening weightlessness as the tires lost their grip. I tried to steer into the skid and downshift, but the car just kept sliding until it slammed hard into a tree. The airbag hit me like a punch to the face. I sat there in the sudden quiet, stunned. My car was totaled, nose deep in a snowbank. Roadside assistance told me it would be 40 minutes, so I called my dad. He promised to head out immediately to wait with me. That's when I heard it. Over the howl of the wind, there were footsteps. Clear, heavy crunches in the snow. I stepped out of the driver's side, peering over the roof of the car. The footsteps stopped. In their place came a sound I can only describe as a wet, rhythmic slurping. Looking toward the tree line, I saw a dark shape that looked disturbingly like a person standing in the shadows. "Hello?" I called out. The slurping stopped. No one answered. I stood there for a few awkward, terrifying seconds before diving back into the car and locking the doors. Less than a minute later, something, a rock or a frozen clump of dirt, cracked against the passenger window. I couldn't see out of the glass because it was caked in snow. I grabbed my 9mm from the glove box and stepped back out, my heart hammering. When I checked the perimeter of the car, I felt the blood drain from my face. There were fresh boot prints circling the entire vehicle, leading from the passenger door straight into the dark woods. And there in the snow were dark, hot spatters of blood. I followed the trail, my flashlight cutting through the dark. The blood got thicker the deeper I went until I found a mass in the snow. It was a deer, completely slaughtered. Its stomach had been ripped open, and its head was missing, severed cleanly from its body. I didn't wait to see more. I scrambled back to the car, but when I pulled open the driver's door, I almost lost my lunch. Lying right there on my seat, positioned as if it were staring at the steering wheel, was the severed deer head. I didn't think, I just ran. I bolted down the road into the dark until I saw headlights. I waved my hands like a madman, still clutching my handgun until the car stopped. It was my dad. I scrambled into the passenger seat, shaking, trying to explain the horror I'd just seen. He didn't believe a word of it, until he drove me back. The deer head was gone. The carcass in the woods was gone, replaced by heavy drag marks in the snow. But there, on my driver's seat, was a massive, fresh stain of blood. I never called the police. I was too exhausted, and I knew a report wouldn't do anything for a ghost in the woods. I still don't know who was out there that night, or why they wanted me to see that. I just know that sometimes, you aren't as alone as you think you are.